do his will.
Welcome to another edition of the Public Interest. My name is David Granger, and today we discuss the topic of banning single use plastics. And everyone, everyone, everywhere, every single day, should be concerned about the peril posed by single use plastics. And as you know, on this program, we look at both foreign policy and domestic policy to see how the two are related. And this topic is a global matter, it's a global crisis. And Guyana is not immune from what is taking place in other parts of the world. Housewives, particularly, mothers who use single use plastics, plastic bags to carry home groceries, plastic bottles for their homemade drinks, plastic food boxes for their children's lunch kits, plastic straws to drink coconut water, plastic wrappers on candy bars. All of these, may seem to be harmless, and they're everyday items that we use in our homes and schools and places of entertainment. But single-use plastics, although they're cheap, they're clean, they're convenient, and they're easy to dispose, but they are very deadly. They take a very huge, price. They cost us quite a lot, and they have inevitably a big impact on our health, on our environment, in the neighborhood, in the community, and of course, the natural environment, our rivers and the ocean and streets and so on. So single-use plastics are not without some consequences, and we must all be careful. And I speak particularly to mothers and housewives because they must come face to face with single-use plastics every day in the shops, in their homes, in the schools. And unless they understand the danger posed by single-use plastics, we will not be able to achieve the ban, because we should be aiming at a complete ban of single-use plastics. People are overpowered by plastics. Baby bottles, clothing, electronics, furniture, food packaging. All of these items within the last 20 or 30 years have replaced what we grew up to know as natural fabrics, cloth, glass, leather, paper, and wood. And we don't seem to be aware that these plastic products contain chemical additives, and some of which can affect, our bodies. They can cause hormone-related cancers. They can cause infertility. They can cause neurodevelopment disorders. And there's one notorious chemical, bisphenol, which is endocrine disrupting. That is to say, it affects the way the body functions. And sometimes you must read the label of the product you're buying to make sure it doesn't contain these harmful chemicals. And some of them contain, polycarbonates, and they can affect unborn children. They can affect the fetuses. And these chemicals, play havoc with a child's neurological development. So when I speak about single-use plastics, I'm not just talking about something on the street. I'm just talking about something that gets into your body, something that affects your family and your children. And this is a matter of public concern, a matter of public interest. That's why I'm raising it today with you. SUPs, what they call single-use plastics, are a major cause of pollution. They're dangerous and they're ubiquitous. You can find it everywhere. Sometimes in barbed wire, you can see black plastic bags strung up there. You go on the beach after a picnic and you see drink bottles and plastic bags and so on. And sometimes some do-good people go on these beaches at the foreshores and do cleanup. But we shouldn't have to be doing cleanup. We shouldn't use these things at all. And because they're so dangerous, we need to have a plan as to how we deal with single-use plastics. These plastics contribute to the congestion of our drainage systems. And now that we're in the rainy season again, you can see that some of these canals or trenches and gutters are being clogged up with single-use plastics. Once our drainage systems are congested with these plastics, they will result in flooding, they will harm aquatic life, and they will contaminate our rivers and freshwater supplies. And in the hinterland, particularly, some of the hinterland communities depend on rivers for bathing, cleaning, drinking water. And when these rivers are contaminated or polluted, it means that mothers, women, and children could be harmed. And there is evidence that in some hinterland communities, uh, even the fish that people catch in rivers which are polluted could contain some of these toxins. So we need to be very careful, because when you talk about single-use plastics, not only are they hazardous visibly, but sometimes you can't see the harm that they, they cause. And not only do they block drains and spoil the landscape, but sometimes animals eat these plastics. They don't know that they're dangerous. And when the animals are slaughtered, you discover that, the stomachs contain a lot of undigested and undigestible plastics, cups and bags and so on. And of course, it happens with the fish as well. So we're talking about the whole, existence of humanity being threatened by single-use plastics. We live in a country which is governed by a constitution, and the constitution is very, very clear that the state has certain responsibilities. Every citizen in Guyana has the right, every citizen in Guyana has the right to an environment that is not harmful to his or her well-being. That is what the Constitution says. The Constitution charges that the state shall protect the environment for the benefit of present and future generations through reasonable legislative and other measures designed to prevent pollution, and to prevent ecological degradation. So the state cannot stand aside and say this is a matter of personal behavior or human conduct or misconduct. The state has a responsibility to provide an environment which is safe for us now, and of course, our children and grandchildren, for future generations. So this is not something that the state could escape from. It's a responsibility that it has to bear. Now, as you know, in 2019, December 2019, I announced something called the National Petroleum Day. And that was the day on which Guyana became a petroleum state. We are now a petroleum state. But even though the present administration is reaping billions of dollars from that petroleum bonanza, the extraction of oil and gas is also, a contributory factor, because single-use plastics are made from petroleum byproducts. The extraction of oil and gas produce 99% of plastics. And in the process of production, they release toxic substances into the air and water. These toxins can harm the brain, they can harm the eyes, they can harm your liver, they can harm your skin, they can harm your sense of smell, they can harm your sense of breathing, and they can create gastrointestinal disorders. So toxins cannot easily be wished away simply because you're rich or because the country is getting a lot of revenue. The oil and gas industry has a cost, and the cost is not only in Guyana, but around the world. The oil and gas industry is a contributory factor to environmental degradation and to the danger posed by single-use plastics, which of course are produced by the oil and gas industry. In Guyana, single-use plastics comprise about 6.7% of the garbage that is collected daily from canals. from the gutters, from parapets, from road corners, in rural and urban areas, also in hinterland areas. Surprisingly, part of Ghana that used to be pristine, uh, you now see garbage piles, and I think some of you remember seeing in the newspapers some of the 36,000 Venezuelan migrants scavenging in garbage dumps. It meant that that garbage was not disposed of in a sanitary manner. Single-use plastics account for a portion of the daily um, garbage toll, or the garbage, the volume of garbage that is collected in Guyana every day. Every year, 180,000 tons of solid waste are disposed of in Georgetown alone, in the Higgs Bosch landfill. And every day, 500 tons, these are metric tons, um, are disposed of by the petroleum sector alone. Every day, 500 tons of garbage are disposed of by the petroleum sector. So, in any given time, um, you're talking about a huge amount of garbage being disposed of, and a lot of that uh, cannot be recycled. And so there is a danger there that SUPs, the single use plastics, which are made of low density polyethylene, cannot be disposed of safely because they don't disintegrate. You put them in the landfill, you go back 10 years later, they're still in the landfill just as you put them there. 20 years later, 100 years later, they'll still be there. They're almost indestructible. That is the danger. So we think that we throw away something and it's gone forever. No, it's not gone forever. It's gone to another part of, of, of the region or the city. And that is something we must be concerned about. Single use plastics are contributing to this huge volume of 180,000 tons of garbage disposed of in Georgetown alone. So that is a very important consideration we have to bear in mind. Around the world, things are grim. Um, when you look at what is happening in other countries, plastic pollution is creating havoc. The, the Mother Earth is drowning in literally in plastic litter and microplastics. More than half of all the plastics ever made were produced only in the last 15 years. And 91% of the plastics produced over the last 15 years have never been recycled. About 12% of the plastics have been incinerated, but a great percentage cannot be recycled. They are sent or disposed of in landfills, or they're released into the natural environment. And throwing something in the landfill or throwing something in an ocean does not really destroy or terminally dispose of any plastics. Plastics are useful. We mustn't feel that we can do without plastics. We need them for health, we need them in society, we need them in our economy, but they don't have to be SUPs, single use plastics. And to the extent that we use single use plastics, we create problems for the environment. Uh, Global plastic production has risen and continues to rise exponentially. And about 400 million tons of plastics are produced worldwide every year. But these plastics, not only in Guyana, but in other countries, create leakages into the aquatic systems. And increasingly, we feel that plastics are contributing to environmental hazards. And by 2030, another 8 years or so, the amount of plastics being produced will probably double. So we're not solving the problem. The problem is continuing to worsen. And as Guyanese, we need to protect ourselves. We need to protect our children, our families, and we need to look after our country to make sure that in years to come, plastics don't cause such a deterioration of the environment that life becomes difficult. Now, plastic pollution, to a great extent, up to now, is irreversible. And I pointed out a few minutes ago that it is injurious to health, it is destructive of biodiversity, and it contributes to the adverse effects of climate change and by causing environmental damage. What have we done about it in Guyana? We imported about 67 million US dollars worth of single-use plastics up to 2020 in 2020, and it is much lower than it was in previous years. In 2019, we imported 112 million US dollars, but we have been able to cut down because the coalition administration took a stand against single-use plastics. Single-use plastics and plastic products account for a significant portion of our imports up to now. But the coalition, APNU AFC coalition, started to work towards banning SUPs, single-use plastics, by encouraging restaurants and supermarkets to switch to biodegradable bags and reusable boxes. These plastic bags are a nuisance. They are a hazard. They look cheap and easy, but they create problems. Store managers, we know, tried to convince their customers to carry their own shopping. Some of them even gave away reusable bags, telling their customers, next time you come to the store, bring your bag. But the customers would not do that. Some of them would just turn up with the empty hands, and they prefer to pay for new bags. And that multiplies the problem. So we need to look at customer behavior as well. It's not just blaming the store managers and the people who run the restaurants. We too need, as customers, we too need to understand the danger that these single-use plastics pose to society and to ourselves and to our children. Now, the APNU AFC actually went to the National Assembly to amend the Customs Act. This is this amendment required importers since 2017 to pay for certain types of plastics or to remove certain types of plastics. And it started, and we engaged in consultations from the first year of being in office. APNU AFC was preaching the message of reduce, reuse, and recycle plastic. Reduce the amount of plastic bags you use, reuse those that could be reused, and recycle. Unfortunately, in Ghana, there is no known recycling facility. But it doesn't mean that every time you go to the market, every time you go to the restaurant, you must get a new plastic bag. And of course, there's nothing to do with that new plastic bag. In 2016, we did actually ban certain plastics. And, unless you get the agreement of the consumers, these orders and rules and regulations wouldn't work. So we started a process of consultation. And that consultation was aimed at banning the importation, the manufacture, the sale, and use of single-use plastic products. The knives and forks that you get in the restaurants, some of them are flimsy and they're really very difficult to use. The cups that we use when we go on picnics in the park on Easter Monday and so on. The plates, the plastic plates that we use, straws, the drinking straws made of plastic, utensils, those little utensils we get in with pepper and ketchup and so on in the restaurants. All of these things are most likely SUPs, single-use plastics. And our coalition in 2017, 2018, 2019 had actually drafted a plan which partly represents the Green State Development Strategy, that from 2021, that is the year after we left office, year before the last year, we should have banned all of these SUPs, cups, knives and forks, plates, straws, and other utensils. And of course, we left office in 2020, and the present administration doesn't seem to see the need to ban these SUPs. Um, in Guyana, too, the main means of disposal of single use plastics is by dumping and burning. Legally, dumping is done by sanitary service contractors who would take the garbage in some NDCs and in the urban areas to designated landfill sites. It is expected that at the regional level, RDCs, and the neighborhood levels of the NDCs, there should be solid waste schemes so that people don't have to dump household waste on the parapets, or definitely not in the canals. Um, and we yet do not have, this country does not have a proper recycling facility for, reusing or destroying single-use plastics. So the threat of environmental pollution, particularly to air, water, and the earth itself, the soil, um, still persists. The proliferation of SUPs will continue to damage our draining system, and that is a contributory factor to the floods that we're facing now. My friends, Guyana is not alone. Other countries in the world have taken the lead. In fact, the Caribbean region is one of the greatest offenders, maybe because of the hospitality industry. But other countries are aware of the danger caused by single use plastics. And we need to see what is happening there. Uh, about 20 years ago, some countries took the lead in implementing bans on plastic bags. In fact, right now you can't even pass the airport with plastic bags. They'll seize the plastic bags. It is a banned item. You can't enter the country. And once you're in the country, you can't use plastic bags. They're not available. You go to supermarkets, no plastic bags. Other countries have actually started to understand the danger posed by microplastics. Some companies actually put uh, beads, micro beads, in their cosmetics so that people cleaning their faces, they would use like a scrubbing agent in those personal care products, cosmetic products. But these products, although they appear in facial cleansers or toothpaste or household cleansers, they get into the food chain. And these microplastics have been turning up in fish caught in the ocean. So it is hard to justify the use of microplastics, which are also single-use plastics. We therefore in Guyana, and I'm particularly speaking to women, I'm speaking to mothers, I'm speaking to people who have responsibility for others, caregivers, to understand that the problem of single-use plastics is getting worse by the day all over the country. And we should remind ourselves, and the state, the government of Guyana should be reminded that the state has a responsibility to protect the environment um, for our benefit and for the benefit of future generations. And what is happening now is that the pervasive use of microplastics is one of the damaging elements in the economy. And unless we overcome this ban, or this problem of microplastics, we will not be able to overcome some of the problems that confront us during rainy season like this, when, of course, you have a lot of flooding. So it is a personal responsibility that families, parents, mothers must reduce the use of plastics, and turn to other reusable items such like glass, for drinking bottles and so on, baby bottles. Um, we must see that our NDCs, have proper garbage disposal facilities so that the garbage is not piled up on the parapets or go into the canals. We must insist that the RDCs, and this, don't forget that during the coalition administration, 4 new tongues were created at Bartica, Mabaruma, Madia, and Lethem. And each one of those tongues has a municipal council, and each municipal council has the responsibility to create a landfill and also to prevent, the buildup of garbage. So this is our responsibility at the individual level, at the personal level, at the neighborhood level, at the regional level, and definitely at the level of the national government. This is a threat, and it will not go away unless all citizens accept the responsibility for their personal conduct and put pressure on the government to ensure that single-use plastics are banned. Thank you. Keep safe, and may God bless you all.
Let us cooperate for the younger. Let us cooperate for our land. Let us resolve to fight together. See we do it right together. Can we do it? Yes, we can.
Each man must do